Hello, my name is Karen Hawley Miles, and I'm the Executive Director of Education Resource Strategies. Congratulations! You're working together, engaging in this workshop because you already know how important it is to think strategically about the design of your compensation system. But to put it in a historic perspective, public schools in America have been working for the last 5 decades with a compensation system that was designed to meet a whole different set of needs. It was designed to ensure objectivity and to protect teachers from the capricious whims of administrators, some of whom knew nothing about teaching at all. But we're in a whole new era, a new time, and we need to think differently about compensation. And that's what you're here to do today. So let's be clear about the reason that we're revising teacher compensation. And that is because teaching effectiveness is the most important in-school factor influencing student achievement. There's not a study out there that doesn't show that. It trumps pretty much everything else that you can play around with in the mix of things that you're doing in terms of improving student achievement. That makes it our moral obligation to make sure that we get effective teachers in every classroom, especially in the classrooms that serve our neediest children. But the answer to how we get more effective teachers in each of these classrooms is a lot more complex than just raising teachers' salary. So as we think about changing compensation, we want to be clear where raising salary fits into what we call the value proposition. So in order to get and keep great employees in the private sector, they consider the whole package of things that make a career exciting, and the same things hold in teaching. Why do people start and keep on teaching? Mostly because they want to serve children, and so there's a huge intrinsic value there. But the other pieces of the value proposition include, in addition to salary, include working conditions, the opportunities to grow in your career and achieve recognition for that growth, the opportunities, the recognition and respect that folks get in their job, as well as the benefits that you get, healthcare benefits, vacation days, the length of the workday, and pensions. A recent study by the AFT on Generation Y teachers suggests that while salary is important, the reason teachers choose to teach in particular districts and schools is because of the quality of the leadership, the opportunity to work in teams, and other things that have to do with the quality of the working conditions and the opportunities to learn. So obviously, it's not just about the money. And as you're putting your package together, your value proposition together, you want to be thinking about how you're going to put the pieces together and which of those pieces actually cost money to implement, so that you don't spend it all on salary in ways that actually won't enable you to create a full value proposition. Districts may not be able to match the labor market salaries, and so they're going to have to be really creative about how they put the pieces of the value proposition together to maximize their value for prospective and current teachers. We do have a huge opportunity, though, because the current value proposition is really not set up to attract the kinds of teachers we need today. Let's just walk through a little bit about what the current value proposition looks like, and this chart is in your workbook. In the current salary structure, teacher salaries rise because of years of experience and adding course credits to your resume. And so this means that it takes a set amount of time for salaries to get to the maximum, and that teachers have to do work outside the classroom and school in order to add money to their overall compensation. And it also means that all teachers get treated the same in terms of salary, regardless of whether they contribute more in the school workplace or achieve greater results with their students. So the current step-and-lane structure is a one-size-fits-all structure that doesn't distinguish. The second big thing about the current salary structure is that after about 15 years, teacher salaries are on average 60% or below the full-time earnings of other comparable careers for people aged 25 to 64 who have a college education. Now, this number is not adjusted for the difference in work hours that teachers formally have to contribute, but it still reflects when you're choosing a career, you have the opportunity to choose this career, which in general makes significantly less than other careers might on average. The third factor is that teachers may not understand the current value proposition sufficiently to appreciate all of its elements, particularly in the area of benefits and pensions. As we'll see later, the benefits in many districts that are offered to teachers account for significantly higher percent of compensation than they do in most private sector jobs, and yet it's not clear based on the research whether teachers, particularly the younger teachers, value these things as much as their cost. So clearly we need to pay attention to quantifying the impact of benefits and pensions, and then we need to consider how all of the elements of the value proposition combine. And something that points that out is a recent study which surveyed the top third of college graduates that was reported in a recent McKinsey study, suggested that only 1/3 of folks who were considering teaching as a career believed that teaching paid enough to support a family, and that half of them believed they could earn more as a garbage collector, pointing out quite clearly that we need to do a better job communicating the entire compensation package in addition to the other pieces of the value proposition. Finally, consistent with that one-size-fits-all salary structure that I just described, few districts actually offer career pathway opportunities that enable teachers to do different things over their career that both grow and leverage their skills and for which they're recognized either by compensation, respect, or sort of differences in the structure and nature of their job. Given these factors, it's not surprising that the current value proposition seems to ensure that we're not attracting America's best and brightest into teaching in the way that other top-performing nations attract top-third graduates. This chart shows that on average, only 23% of our teachers in our schools come from the top third of college graduates. That number falls to only 14% when we look at our neediest schools. And to add fuel to the fire, it's the top-performing teachers who are most likely to leave early in their career. It's clear that whatever we're doing is not creating the kind of effective teaching we need to get to the levels of performance needed to help all children participate in the American dream. Even though we've certainly increased student performance over time, we've done it for all students, and the gap between low and high income remains, and we need to keep our eye on that as we continue to build teaching effectiveness. So what is the formula of things we put together to improve teaching effectiveness, since we know it's the most important factor, to the point where we're getting the kinds of levels of achievement that we want in our schools? We've just said already that it's not all about teacher compensation, but it's clearly a big part of the overall puzzle. So the first place we need to start with our compensation system, hence the title of the papers that you read for this, is we need to be deliberate about what we're trying to accomplish, about our intent with compensation. And so here we are presenting the high-level framework for what would be the goals of a compensation system. These 5 things, we would argue, would be true across all systems. Most systems could use this as their framework for thinking about what they want to do with their compensation structure. They want to attract a high-potential teaching force, getting back to the what kinds of college graduates do you want to attract, what sorts of things do you look at to do that. They want to make sure that their compensation system serves to retain high-performing teachers and also encourage low performers to leave the system. The idea that we would deliberately structure a compensation or value proposition to encourage low performers to leave is something, again, that the private sector has done a lot of, but it is noticeably absent in the structure of compensation, reward incentives, and other career management systems in public education today. The third thing we want to do, and this is also a concept that folks haven't deliberately incorporated into their compensation structure, is we want to leverage the expertise of the highest contributors, the highest performers in the system, to help promote continuous improvement in teaching effectiveness. So we want to get the most out of the folks that do the best. There's some really powerful work on the potential impact that this could have for students that has been done by the Public Impact Group by Brian Hassel and his colleagues. The fourth thing we want to do is to align a high-performing teaching force to support the district's strategies and performance goals. This goal suggests that a district has its own specific context that it needs to think about as it's designing its compensation system. So one district's compensation structure and details might look quite different from another's, and these differences would relate to differences in shortage areas in the district, differences in the combinations of skills that their school designs suggest, and differences in their needs because of the composition of students in their school and the distribution of performance across their schools. So you need to design your compensation system for the long term. This is really an important concept that surprisingly there are examples of that districts have missed, is you can design a compensation system where the numbers add up today, but because of changes in the numbers of teachers at different performance levels, changes in the cost of living, changes in the numbers of teachers earning bonuses over certain years, the compensation system might be unaffordable 5 years from now. And so it's very important as you think about this to model out different scenarios and based on assumptions about how skill levels and the composition of the teaching workforce will change over time. And we'll be talking a lot about this notion of fiscal sustainability through the set of activities in this workshop. While you want to structure your whole value proposition to accomplish these overall goals, as I've said today, we're going to focus on compensation, defined as salary. We'll talk a little bit about benefits, and the intersection of compensation with roles, responsibilities, and rewards.